fun. Well, we are both like two fast-moving, like hurricanes when we were originally talking and trying to get together. And Jaron introduced us, and we exchanged some emails.
Yeah.
And then you were on the road, and then I sent you an email that was something like, hey, I know we're both really busy, but if this is not a fit and we're not coming up, please let me know.
Yeah.
You probably remember that one.
You strip-lined me. You tried to take it away. You said, yeah.
I was really busy.
I know,
I'm
so-
like, dude, could you please let us know what's going on?
She just took just
But
enough
what I
away,
did-
just
so-
enough away.
Yeah.
Where I had to come back, be like, okay, we'll figure it out. We'll do it.
So what you
Right?
guys are about to witness, two people that totally love sales. Yeah?
I think
So
so.
why do you like sales?
Well, actually, it's funny. You like when I
I
was
love
watching.
Dallas.
Stop it. All right.
I just wanted to tell
But
them.
what evoked an emotion in me earlier when I just came in and Stiletto Coffee was up here, and I was like, "Wow, this is amazing. This is beautiful." Are they still in here?
Yeah,
Awesome.
raise your hand.
Perfect. So I'll tell you why I love sales, and this is why. And this is a perfect example. Is I forgot the gentleman's name.
Brad.
But Brad talked about this feature benefit type of thing, and he had done this direct marketing play, and yeah, he's absolutely right. Is like, how many times a day do we get pushed with advertisements like, shit, okay, like, this is better than this, or this does this, and you're like, okay, not another one of these. We get sold on that type of stuff all the time. But what Brad and Stiletto Coffee had done is they had evoked a response and an emotion that had real meaning, it had a purpose, and had this mission that makes you feel something about the product. And, when I started into sales 4 years ago, I didn't know what it was, right? I realized that it was about the people. It was about the connection that you have, because people like people that are like themselves. They have that feeling, right? People trust people that are like themselves, and also people buy from people they trust. And so when you think about sales and like this encompassing nature of this environment, it was a people game. It wasn't a product game. It wasn't a pitch game. Like, I don't pitch when I sell anymore. I meet, I understand, and I help communicate like what they're feeling. Trying to get them to communicate their feelings is, the majority of the problem. And so the reason why I love sales is because it's like the sociology, the psychology around it is like incredibly fascinating. People buy with the limbic brain that it evokes this emotional response to things. Like, when we start thinking about it, we use our neocortex, right? Where it's like, oh, I feel this way. Now, let me go think about it, right? Like, if I had to think about coming down here for the week, I was probably busy. But I was like, yeah, let's do this. Sounds wonderful, right? So I was like, okay, we've got a ticket. We're going. And I bought in the moment of passion. I bought in the moment of purpose. And a lot of the time is that we choose the products we choose today because we feel a way about it, right? And I think that's what drew me to Lyft in that experience there, is that when you get in the car and you're going from A to B, it's commoditized, just like coffee, right? Commodities are not sexy products at all. Like, they are everywhere. We all have cars. We all have shuttles. We have these things. But when I do something, I want to feel a certain way about how I do it. And somehow, dumb luck probably, or just not knowing what I was doing, I started thinking about sales like that when I started this journey, 4 years ago. And it allowed me to understand the people component, right? And that's why people buy. Not because, I have a better cup of coffee, but the way I feel about my coffee.
That's right.
Yeah.
It makes you rise up.
It does.
Like a powerful woman,
Yeah.
and go kill the day.
Or man. Or man.
Or cool man.
Or cool man.
Or
right?
cool man.
Right? And I was actually kind of bummed I didn't get to taste your coffee. We had Starbucks back there, so.
We had that other brand that tastes like tea.
Yeah.
They'll make sure that they
We'll
get
talk. I'll try to get some of the coffee for our office. We'll talk about it. I love it. Yeah.
That's funny. Interesting that you say that, because when you walk into your offices, first of all, the vibe of Lyft is totally incredible, right? And the first thing that happens when you walk off the elevator, it says, be yourself.
Sure.
And then, of course, you have a killer lobby that's like pink and purple, which is really cool, because I was like, oh, wow, that's like my brand. But then you have all these candies and things. You definitely need coffee. Maybe you guys could co-brand.
We have a thing with Phil's right now. But
Who?
Phil's Coffee.
Who's that?
Right, you know Phil's?
No.
All right, don't worry about it.
Is it good?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Are they San Francisco based?
What? There you go, right?
The dudes.
Yeah,
Oh.
I like it. I like it. I mean, we
Is
are.
it 44% of your,
Yeah, I know where you're going with this one. Yeah, it is.
well, I'm not going to go there yet,
Okay.
but isn't it 44% women?
Yeah. I think even a little bit more. I mean, we have like a 50% of our management team, director and above, is women too. I mean, that is one of the basis of our brand, right? One call close. Right now we're learning.
It's like, let's do a deal. We have an hour and 11 minutes. Let's do a deal.
But it's funny. In the reality, this is sales, right?
Right.
We're talking about this feeling that we have with each other right now. Like, and they have, yeah.
We're going to take questions in a little bit. I'm sorry. We have mics. I know you guys are like dying. Here's what I want to suggest. My bad because I didn't cue it up. I know you guys are going to have questions for Dallas. Would you all like to ask Dallas some questions? Yeah. Do me a favor. Will you write them down on a card? Because otherwise we'll be here until like next Wednesday. And then we've got mics on each side, and we'll take some questions in a little bit.
Yeah, and what I do if I can't field them, I'll provide with my email, because I have a flight at 2:30 today that I have to get to, so I'll make sure that I can help respond over the next few days, too.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So it goes back to sales, right? So selling and the feeling and vibe. You know, sometimes when you do sales with somebody that it just doesn't feel right,
Yeah.
but you still do the deal.
Does this feel right?
What? Us? Stop. Don't make me hit you in the head with my
No,
stiletto.
So let me ask you a question. Then. What is that?
Wait.
What is that example for you? Because I think you.
I'm the Oprah of the show.
I know.
Ask away. What do you got?
No, you're evoking this emotion, right? You're like, it doesn't feel right, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Which part?
the selling process. When you're doing a deal and it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
What was that last example for you? I mean, I'm sure they want to hear that too.
What was the last example? Well, I don't do deals if they don't feel right.
That's right.
I pull the plug instantly. Like, I could be 10% into the process, 90% into the process, but I will never ink a deal if it doesn't feel right. I've done that.
Yeah.
And that is so there's a saying, one shit will ruin 1,000 attaboys.
Yep.
Which is basically saying you have one deal go bad and it wrecks the other, 1,000 deals that went great. What about you? When was the last deal that you did where you're like, oh man, what did I do this for?
Man, actually, it was a deal with Solar City. Actually, we ended up losing the deal, but we extended our resources way too far.
Yeah.
Yeah, we stretched. We knew there was opportunity. I mean, they have 129 offices of 80,000 employees, and so from a pure alignment side, they're a tech-driven company, and Elon Musk obviously under that umbrella with all the companies that he's done so fantastically well, is that we were chasing a logo, to represent our accomplishments, and we extended in areas and we made concessions in other areas when our product wasn't ready yet for this, when we didn't have the support resources in a way. And that right there killed momentum in so many other functions of our business because we had to focus resources. It's opportunity cost.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
I mean, how many people in this room have had one bad customer or client, right? I know I have it plenty.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
How that changes you mentally, right? That right there is an opportunity cost you never get back. Because what happened if that mentality stretches to your employees, to your home life, to your own personality, right? That will ruin a culture, and all because
They're such a time suck too. They take far more time than the totally awesome client.
Absolutely, and those are the things that are mentally challenging. Because we went this road, right?
Yeah.
Because I reached too far, because I wasn't confident enough to say no.
Yeah.
Right? Even though saying yes is important and breaking through those barriers and getting to that next thing is obviously very important, but you do that by what is subtraction, addition by subtraction.
Right.
The same type of thing, and it's relevant at all stages of a business, especially early on. In some of the businesses when we had 5 employees and 6 employees and things like that, if we had to extend resources to everybody, we really significantly hurt the business. And it's just financial debt. You're going to pay that debt back, whether it's through your culture, whether it's through the product, or whether it's through cash flow at some point, whether you know it or not. But it's just a reality, right? And so it's almost better to say no to the right thing than sometimes to say yes to the right thing.
And sometimes it's timing.
Absolutely.
I mean, sometimes the timing is great to do a huge round or have
Yeah.
strategic partners. And, well, you guys just said no to a really large billion-dollar deal with GM. Remember, they wanted to do the buyout.
Well, yeah. So I can't disclose all the
I'm not-
information
should I
around
not
it,
have
but
said that?
no, you're fine.
Oh, sorry.
Um,
So the next question on sales is? No.
Yes.
Right. So was that a one call yes?
From what I heard, right?
Yeah. Actually, what I just said was in the papers.
Yeah.
So it's public knowledge.
yeah.
But my question really was in alignment with that. Sometimes there are reasons they seem really good, super provocative. It looks like a yes, but if you'll just hold and be patient and own your value,
Yeah.
then it's possible to actually acquire more revenue, more this, more that, right? And so what are some, I mean, you guys have grown really fast.
We have. We've added about 1,600 employees this year.
In 6 months or 7 months, wasn't it? Or 8?
Yeah, I was thinking closer to 11 now, but yeah.
11 months?
Yeah.
Right, so there's challenges that come with that, yeah?
Absolutely.
You always amaze me because you're so cool, calm, and collected on the outside and super strategic thinker and super smart. And on the inside, I know you're like the Terminator.
Sometimes.
And so there's challenges, in adding human capital that quickly.
Sure.
Can you share some of the lessons that, when you scale, because we're going to talk about scaling later today, what are some of the successes of scaling, but what are some of the challenges that go with that? Because they're all looking to scale and grow their business too. But it's not always, let's just scale and it's all kumbaya.
No, I think this is a fascinating concept, or even, story arc that you can develop with scale, because we read in the news, like, this is sexy, this is beautiful, this is important, we're growing revenue, we're getting articles and XYZ, and we're making more connections, we're feeling good. But good at what cost, right? And when you scale quickly, sacrifices have to happen. We talk about this technical debt, like we talked about earlier, is that if we're moving fast, well, how are we cutting this corner that we're going to have to pay for later and things like that? And one of the mistakes that, we really made, and I'll talk about just specifically on our sales organization within Lyft, is that we're at, I think close to about 100 and something right now. I can't remember the exact off last Monday's count, but something like that. And that all happened within the year, right? And so we not only had to understand strategically who our clients were going to go after, how we were going to divide the team resources and energy, how we were going to build processes, right? How were we going to define a vision and a mission that people could believe? And also we had to understand, we sold into the travel space. Especially on the corporate side, we are helping employees get from A to B. That's legitimately what we do. But we're doing it in a new way because now they have optionality, right? For the first time ever, if you're traveling with your company, you can actually use Lyft in 200 different cities in the country, right? Instead of a taxi here or a black car there or a shuttle there. And we had to go change people's mindsets. We had to go change people's understanding of how to travel. And our core demo, for the most part, was in anywhere from 45 to 55 and had never really experienced what Lyft was. And so there was a lot of agony at the beginning because companies didn't know how to buy what we bought. And so we had to really be strategically and think. And what happened because of that, we had moved upstream, we had changed directions, we were identifying core concepts and core customers. And we made these concessions on quick growth around operational efficiencies. I can tell you we are paying for it right now. There are some stressful, hard days when we're trying to understand comp structures, when we're trying to understand sales process, clean data integration with not only our back-end systems, but the actual technical products that we have for our sales representatives today. And the mistakes that we made is that we didn't plan far enough ahead for the things that were going to come no matter what. And we knew that, and it's we have a very senior team over there, and it's one of those things that's hard to do because everybody has this feeling. You wake up, you're in your business, you feel your business, you do your business, but you're not thinking outside of your business sometimes. And those are some of the most dangerous mistakes that we've made because we were so involved in what we were doing. And now our processes are kind of like off the axle a little bit, and like we have to come back, we have to rethink, and then we have to go again. So like when I think about scale, there's a few things. It's the process getting there is the number one thing. If you can't measure it, well, why the hell are you doing it, right? Because you need to be able to understand and communicate that to your business partners, to your consumers, identify that core customer group that actually has the most revenue or most gross margin for your product. Focus your time there as you scale up, because then you're actually using your resources correctly. But the most important, I think, about scale, hands down, is culture. That is the one thing when you're going into a business, if you're 1, 2, 3, 20, 100, or 1,000, if you start making concessions on the values that the people have, the way, when things go bad internally, and they will, and they do quite often, is that person ready for that? Are they committed to go through those periods of time? And are you positioning that when you're hiring? Are you positioning that in your communication with your business partners? If you're not having those conversations almost daily, what do we believe in? How do we feel? Right? What are we going to do if this goes wrong? And that open communication will get you through those humps of scale, because like you're going to have those like business pains. This is inevitable. But it's actually the team and the family that you build around each other that will hold you together through those scaling points. And that's why Lyft is such a beautiful company. John and Logan, have this belief that they want to change transportation, but they do it by helping people, right? And that's why everything we do is for our drivers, and that extends to our customers. And we try to think internally the same way. Everything we do is for our drivers. Every decision we make is for our drivers, because our customers are going to feel that way. And that helps us scale, because you have economies of scale. Now, people doing your work for you, communicating the same vision. So, I don't know, I'm probably rambling on like 19 different things at this point.
Love it.
But it keeps me up at night to this day, right? It's because if you get the people wrong, you don't scale. If you get the people right, like you're going to solve problems, right? And you're going to do it together. And like that's the one thing I have learned that'll ruin a business or make a business succeed from day one without sounding too like platooning about it. So. Yeah.
Well, people say money makes the world go round. I always say people make it happen.
Absolutely.
Right? It was interesting because there's a lot of folks, obviously some have brick and mortar businesses, some are CEOs, some are entrepreneurs, but everyone has the same passion, and that's to drive their business forward and have impact. And, Dallas was talking about how, your culture and who you are being. And we've talked a lot about that yesterday and today. And so I just wanted to just bring back around how you can see that whether your company is generating, $70,000 a year or $700,000 or $7 million or $7 billion valued, that sometimes things don't just change. The world around you may change, but what I really admire and love about you, but also about the company, because you are the company, right? I mean, everybody is the company.
Absolutely.
Is that you guys have been able to create a culture that has been communicated. I mean, it was one thing that blew my mind walking through your business, or when we were all hanging out, I think it was upstairs, when we were all sitting in that area with everybody, is that everybody's on the same page. Sure, there's ripple effect bumps and things that happen, but it is super clear that the energy and how people operate on who they are is sameness. And when you're looking to hire people and grow, you look for an ideal client.
Yeah.
And I mean, who is that ideal client? We've talked a little bit about it. It's like, what does that look like for Lyft and for you? Like, who's the ideal client?
Sure. So we've gone through many iterations of this, and I think a lot of the times people look at like a tech company on like the news and they go, oh, like they've got it figured out. Well, the truth is like, no, like they don't, and we don't. Nobody does really. Like if you don't know, if someone makes it up and you go forward and you fix it, you do that again. That's just the reality. And I think that's an important message to take away is that it doesn't matter where the business is or what it's doing. Most of the time there's struggles, and like it doesn't matter if you're one or two or 1,000. So when we're identifying our clients, I mean, we strategically pick what we think has the most value for our business, and we focus our efforts there until we're wrong. And we have been wrong, right? When we started this business, we went after travel managers. And because, historically and traditionally, those folks had managed all travel components and aspects for corporations. we doubled down, we put resources in it, we started building content, we started communicating, we started going to travel fairs, we started inviting them over for, executive luncheons and things like that. And what we found is that there was no pull. They couldn't strategically get our message to the rest of the organization in a way that had buying power for us. And so we're like, shit, okay, we spent 5 months putting all our resources and effort here, and we're just wrong. Right? Now, we had some good wins. I mean, during that period, we were able to, get Apple as one of our biggest clients and things like that. And, we were doing the right things, and we were moving forward.
But the wins can sometimes camouflage
Yes.
the true reality of the success. How'd you know when to pull the plug?
So I think that's actually one of the most fascinating points that anybody can take away. And if anybody, and I'll just use a poker concept because I come from that world, but
Right on.
if you have pocket aces and you win, but you don't know why you won the hand, did you really win? But if you have pocket aces and you know how to fold pocket aces to someone who has a better hand on the board, well, you're playing the environment. You're strategically thinking about the things that you're doing versus being stuck in this 5-inch period. And I think everybody's been in that situation before because it feels good. I've got them. I got Apple. We got them. It's all over the news. Uber, screw you guys. We got Apple, right? And we just doubled down. We did it right. And that was one of the mistakes we had. But when you're identifying these core clients and these customers, and you're doing anything in business, it's the process and steps that you're taking will help you choose how you go forward. And if you know why you win and you know why you lost, you can expect a result in some form, right? And so it's actually funny when I work with all my team members or the employees in our organization, when we do goal setting, we actually don't talk about results. They're important because we have a job to do, and we know what our target is. But we set things that get us, we set the roadmap to get to those results. We have our objectives, right? We have our activities. Well, we have objectives. It's okay, our objective is that we want to get 5 companies. Our activities that we need to do X, Y, Z. It's things that we can control, right? And so it's going back to this, this targeted audience thing. Well, we got so, I guess, what is it like? We just got so excited about this.
Caught up in the ether?
We caught up in the ether, right? And it blinded us a little bit. And so we're like, okay, we can't do that again. We understood that the core buying power came from the financial arm of a business, through the comptroller, through the CFO, through procurement. And we understood that because they controlled the budget, they saw every expense item that came back through the organization. If we can tell a story to them, well, they're going to come back to us because we can save them 30% off the top. I know that, like a fact. But what else we can do is change behavior. We can give back time to their employees. We can give back a better mental state to the employees. And that has, for us, been a huge success to gain those influencers within the organization to talk about how your employees are going to feel better, how they're going to enjoy their ride or travel experience more. And it wasn't about the feature benefit concept, that we kind of touched on earlier, was that, okay, the feature benefit, we can save you money and you can travel faster. But imagine if your employee gets there happier. Is that meeting going to be more effective? Imagine if they, save you this and they tell that story about Lyft. Well, it's going to help communicate our brand and our message because we made them feel good about their experience. And, and so, this is where we are today. This is kind of like the direction that we're going to. Could it be wrong? It might, yeah, maybe. But right now, we've seen significant momentum. And because of these changes, we've significantly, grown, our business. And right now, within the first year, we're close to about a $70 million run rate in the first year just off that segment alone. So, and that was from about 500,000 when we started it at the beginning, about 14 months ago. So
I want to pause. Where did you start 14 months ago? 500,000?
I think we had about 500,000, yeah.
And today
Yeah,
is 70 million.
yeah.
So let that soak in a minute. And when you're done letting it soak in, you could clap.
Yeah.
You're the driver of that. That's insane.
Well,
No wonder you don't sleep. You want some more coffee?
No, we're good.
Good
well, we haven't
Lord.
won yet, right? So.
But it's just the scratch of the scratch.
Yeah.
The opportunity for you guys is so huge. Yeah. You've accomplished so much. Keep going. This is really awesome.
No, I don't. Where do you want me to go? You tell me. I'll give you back the mic.
No. I think it's fantastic. Look, they hear me speak all weekend. I'm so grateful that you're here. Let's shift gears over and talk about the Wonka room.
Ah.
The Wonka room.
How many people were here that got to see that?
Yeah,
Cool.
over
Okay.
there.
There was a couple people
They're
that came
back.
by, so I just wanted to
Yeah,
make
yeah,
sure
yeah.
that.
The handful of them. Raise your hands again. So there's Shanda, Sherry, Trina, Jaren,
Yeah.
Julie. There's a couple other people that were there but aren't here right this second.
So that's kind of been a part of our company culture forever. So, for example, the Wonka room for us, and now it's more fitting that Gene Wilder just passed away. So
I know.
we have his picture plastered in our there. But
I
it's-
thought about you guys.
Yeah, I know, right? So I was like, oh man, this touches home in
It
a lot of
does.
ways. But we have this room called the Wonka room, and we've had it basically everywhere we've gone in the new, buildings that we have, as we've had to move quite frequently. But for us, it's our heartbeat of our organization. And you get in through a wall. You basically push open the picture, and you can step in and get in.
It's
there.
a little wall. It's a little door.
Yeah, not for the faint of heart, right? So you get into this room, and it's almost whimsical and magical in a place, because everything you thought about what was happening on the outside now appears different on the inside, right? And the concept behind this was that kind of around how we're built as human beings.
Yeah.
It's the feelings that you have inside help you kind of expand your outward appearance, right?
Yeah.
And this was a really important part of how we define our culture, and how the decisions that we made were based on kind of this core concept, right?
Yeah.
And within this room, we collect all the things that made us or have gotten us to where we've gotten today. And people go in. It's kind of like that room. It's kind of that unspoken rule for us. You go in there, and it's a quiet time. You respect the things that are around there. You make sure that you left it better than you found it. And it's really interesting because the room tells a story. I'm trying to imagine, how would you describe the room?
I mean, well, one of the first things that happened when I walked in
Yeah.
it was it almost took my breath away, and the energy was, it's hard to describe. It's peaceful and yet inspiring at a soul level, and it is definitely the pulse and the heartbeat of passion of a dream that came to life.
Yeah, I think it's well said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the living feeling of the dream that they had when they started, and it's pretty cool to see. I mean, and it's one of those gentle reminders. And why is that important to this crowd? Well, obviously, it's fun to see, but it's important is because when you're going through these evolutions of a company, you have to have those things to hold on to. You have to have those totems or those ways to tell those stories to the next generation. And this was our way of doing it. And we kind of became famous for it. And there's a lot of secrets in the room that I won't discuss too much. But anybody can go in there when they go in there, and they can feel it, they can see it, and it gives people another reason to want to fight for us, want us to win, right? Because the decisions that we're making stem from those idealisms, and it stems from those, I guess, our mission and how it's driven through there, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there is a special book in there
There is a book.
that I held
Yeah.
and touched.
So
and
we call it our $1 billion
wanted
book.
to just sit there with it for a while, which I did. You're like, come and look at this. I'm like,
Yeah.
tell them about the book.
No, I think it comes down
Because to me, the book, before
Yeah.
I'm going to jump in, Dallas will tell you about this book, but it's not just a book. And while the contents of the book are extraordinary, it is very much in alignment with No Glass Ceiling.
Yeah.
That it was the dream, and it was the growth, and it's the ultimate vision.
Yeah.
And destination, right? The journey and the destination.
Yeah, it was the manifest, the reality of that
Truly.
dream. Yeah, we call it our $1 billion book, and it's pretty cool. It's I don't know, it's very formal. You find it an old library or something like that,
Yeah.
and you open it up, and it basically tells a story. We were lucky enough to have a few different investors back in December where we raised $1 billion, and for us that was a big deal at the time, and for a lot of companies, one of the biggest rounds ever raised.
Ever.
And
$1 billion round.
Yeah.
You guys get that's a lot of dough, yeah?
wish I saw some of that dough. It would feel good. But
Next time.
I think we are seeing a common thread today is that it's when you're building these organizations, it's you're doing these things to evoke experiences. Right, that's really what we live for, the experience of doing things. Things are nice. We get that, right? Nice pair of shoes, great, good pair of socks. But, you leave resonating with the feeling that you have. And, that's what we all, I think, aspire to do when we're building our businesses, is leave somebody excited about what we're doing. And like, people come in and see this book, and they get to read this little snippet of story, and they get to see the document signed on $1 billion round, and they get to see the investors shaking hands. Is just a snippet of life that you want to keep with you and be able to make sure you can share with that next person. Because when they come in and they see that, well, now you're an extension into that employee where they will carry on that message for you going forward. So I wish I should have brought a picture. I didn't think about that. I could have brought some pictures, but...
AV, Leonard, I'm just going to call an audible. I don't remember. Did I include some slides with Lyft? I don't think I did. I didn't. I have the photos. I don't know. I
Next
must have
time.
had a brain.
Next time.
That would have been great. Yeah, and one of the investors was General Motors,
General
of course.
Motors, yep.
And so that's pretty cool. And you've got some other, big players, and you guys have made some big decisions.
Yeah.
One of the, I think, core successes of Lyft, I mean, when people look at what would be considered, yes, transportation, but a tech company in Northern Cal, like from the outside looking in, and they look at Lyft, and it's got the pink logo, and they seem really cool, and they're a company. For all of you, would you have imagined that Lyft had this kind of heartbeat and pulse within the company, and that they're that committed to their clients and to basically all of you that ride share?
No.
Pretty extraordinary, right? It's pretty cool. How about, I want to open it up for questions in a few minutes, but you've had this killer success with all these different companies, and you love to sell. Some people are afraid of selling.
Yeah.
Why? So this is always hard for
Yeah.
me, right? And you, we talked about this, because for people that love to sell, they're like, why don't people get it? Or why don't they love to sell? What do you think holds people back? Or what is it on why they're scared or they just are hesitant?
Yeah, we all have internal doubts, right?
Yeah.
It's funny, I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert, really.
Really?
I like process and I like numbers, and I think that's just fascinating. I can live in my brain for days on end. But what's interesting about that is that's actually selling. It's preparation. It's understanding the product, right? It's the process that you have beforehand, and that removes those jitters. That removes that rejection, that fear of rejection, right? And so, you talk about the state of selling today. I think it's going down the crapper, really, is that we're hiring, I'll just use the millennial crowd, I'm actually one of them, but we're hiring them very fast, and we're like, okay, get in your job and go talk to people and sell. Well, that's a huge mistake, because what we haven't done is we haven't built a fundamental muscle that kind of raises this base for you, where sales isn't about the conversation, it's about listening, it's about understanding, and you do that by preparing. You do that by, here's my accomplishments before I get on the call. Here's the accomplishments I want to get out of this meeting. Setting a clear agenda, having a purpose, agenda, logistic outcomes like Palo, basic stuff like that, where the tactical purpose of sales is about preparation. And this is it's funny because we'll record calls and we'll listen to reps go through these type of things, and 9 out of 10 times they talk 80% of the time and they listen 20% of the time. He's like, no, let's flip that around. And we have a lot of software that actually measures where the competitor is being brought up, or they're using ums and ands, and so we help them, prepare themselves to present themselves in a manner that gains credibility and professionalism, and that comes with practice, just like anything, right? And I think Jaron and I were talking about this, last night, is that we both come, I played football for a couple years in college, and Dad was in NFL, and he got a few years in NFL, but one of the things that athletes do so well is that we have to watch hours of film every day. We have to be so specific on the steps that we take. We have to be so critical on the things that we're doing, because execution is critical at that moment. If not, you turn the ball over, you punt the ball away, you lose a game, you lose your scholarship, you don't get the next opportunity. Now in business, that just doesn't happen. People are too nice. People are like, well, I think you did a good job, maybe try this. Well, no, it's crap. Come on, man. It takes that self-discipline of being okay, what am I going to get out of this thing today? What are the steps that I'm going to do? And well, what happened? Am I self-aware enough to know that I actually know this outcome of what I'm expecting? And the only way you get there is through practice. right? Like it's a muscle and a skill that you develop, just like anybody has in their profession or with, the area of interest that they do. They dive deep, they learn, they execute, they grow their network. And it's the same thing in sales, but people have this misnomer where I just go up and I speak to somebody. And then I get scared if they say no, I go, oh, okay, and I walk away. Well, no, sales is like having a backbone, but the backbone is structure and process. And I think that it's just missed out on so many, especially I talk about this millennial problem in Silicon Valley today, is that they're just going job to job to job and not getting any better because they haven't learned the muscle to grow. And that is the same as in business, that's the same in our personal lives, right? What is the outcome we're expecting? Are we doing the necessary steps to get there? And it might sound a little cliche, but that's the reality, that's the truth.
It's the process, it's that backbone, and it's also owning the value. And I think you talked about recording yourself, and that's something that I share with my clients or whoever will listen. People always say, I don't understand what I'm doing wrong. Oh, I followed the script. Oh, I did this. And I'm not closing the deal. Have you recorded yourself and then listened to it? I don't like how I sound. Okay, fine. Go get a job because clearly you're not cut out for sales or entrepreneurship. You got to listen to yourself. And the biggest blind spots come from listening to those pain points of you listen to yourself and you go, or you can clearly hear what went sideways, and then you can course correct it. When someone's trying to tell you, here's what you need to do, and if you go and think you're doing that, it's very much like football, like what you guys are talking about. I mean, those fast twitch muscles, if they're going the wrong way, well, then, you're out.
I could
talk football,
I could too, right? But I think that's something that everybody can take away from this room today. Next time you get on a call, take another iPhone or whatever, an Android you have, hit the record button. Listen to it after you're done with the call. Write down what you think went well and what didn't go well. It is painful, right? It's really painful. And you're like, that's me? Why did I say that? What was I trying to do here? We talked for 30 minutes and I didn't get anything. Okay. And then, you start building this habit of self-awareness in this process. And then all of a sudden you start controlling your consumer, your customer, getting the right questions that they, you already know the questions that they're going to ask. I have this draft, I have this graph that I show to, new employees. It's called the money graph. It's basically an arrow with a dollar sign on the bottom. It's we know where we're going the whole time on the phone call, but they're going to go here, 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 and here. And my job is to let them get there, ask a question, let them come back down, and at the end of the process, I get what I want because I already have a plan, right, going into the call. And I usually win. That's part of the process where I've been able to have successes and able to teach successes because we teach people, how to be aware of what they do, and they surprise you.
Yeah.
Right? They bring you these amazing insights, and they surprise you, and they add value to the business. But if I went up to you and I go, well, that was terrible. Why the hell did you do that?
I don't know. I thought I did a good job.
Right? And then you're going to be upset. You're going to be mad. And you're going to think Dallas is an asshole. And, you're not going to listen to what I think is the direction that we want to go. And so it's like anything in management, within sales, is that people management process for them to understand those own shortcomings and make adjustments. I think John Taffer from Bar Rescue is one of the funniest persons at that, if anybody's seen that show. But it's for another time, had a few drinks. But so I think that's the takeaway I have, for a lot of people in this room, is that there is ways that you can take these steps back to impact your business. And the reality is having a plan. But listen to yourself. Have your spouse, your friend listen to you. Have them critique you, right? The next time you're probably going to look out for that or that and or that terrible question that you ask. And you'll slowly start improving. And it's back to this film watching technique, is that you watch 3 hours of film a day because you have to run 10 yards, not 12, right? It's a standard of excellence that you employ on yourself, and you take that discipline to do that. So, in reality, that's what sales is. It's pretty basic.
Yeah.
Right?
We're going to talk about edge selling script this afternoon, which is something that I use for one call close. But, I was telling them earlier, I can give you all the scripts and whatnot, and it's not going to do you any good if you don't understand the psychology of selling, which you talked about earlier when we were talking. And I love that you love selling. And, there's so much, I would love to talk, for the next 3 hours about stuff. But I have a question.
Yeah.
You're so giving and so immersed and all in with Lyft, and it's so inspiring. And you are a huge driver to every organization that you impact. And in fact, you're a mentor for 500 up in Silicon Valley, where you do mentor startups and tech companies, incubators, accelerators, and things like that, which is also admirable. And you've got a lot of cool stuff going on. But for Dallas, you're always giving, out, out, out.
Yeah.
What's next for you? I didn't tell you I was going to ask you that.
Man, gosh, yeah, that's a personal question, right? What is next? I think, it's funny. Like, I come down to this, and like the reality is, like, I get inspired by you guys. I think the courage that people take to start their own businesses is incredibly difficult. Also incredibly risky, right? Because most people just tell you, like, that's a terrible idea, like, this is wrong. Why would you do that? That's all you hear. Right, and you're either your spouse or your parents or your friends, like, yeah, it makes sense, like, and then, what is Dallas doing? He's like wasting his life. But reality is, like, that's me, right? I really enjoy the small business aspect. I really enjoy, and I'm gonna, like, after this, I think there's probably a move to New York at some point for a little bit.
Yeah.
My girlfriend works in fashion, and so, we'll probably spend some time there. And I still have a sister that lives in Manhattan. But for me, it's doing a couple things. I think that I truly enjoy getting a chance to help people and have them understand what their problems are and help them, like, figure out answers, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think advice is terrible, but if you can have someone discover their own problem, like that's a win, and that's a really important thing that you can pay forward to, the next person by asking a few questions. And so, when I look at the next few years for me, it's hopefully this Lyft thing works out pretty well. That'd be nice for me, but. I want to build a business. I'm going to build a lifestyle business where...
Your own business?
My own business, yeah, for sure. I want to control my time, right? That's the most important thing to me, right? And so, like, how do you get your time back? Well, you control the things that you do.
Do you have a business in mind?
We have a handful, yeah. Nothing outwardly shared yet.
Maybe we should talk later.
Yeah, later. We can do that. But, like, I think I have a construct, right? I know that... I want to work with a customer that'll give me about $6,000 to $15,000 a year, because anything below that is a lot of work, and you have to continually get new customers in the door. Mm-hmm. That'll give me my time back and build a process that is not for directly small businesses, but for, like, medium small businesses who have an understanding of buying, and that helps operational efficiency. And so, without saying too much, like, those are the type of things that I'm really interested in, because, like, they have material impact to businesses. And I genuinely really like talking to people who are at that stage in their company of, like, 50 to 200, because there's, like, this aspiration and there's this inspiration from not only them and their employees, and, like, they have things that are breaking all the time, so you have stuff that can give them to fix it. So
maybe some equity deals too.
Yeah. So, I mean, part of that is, like, I thought about building kind of like my own fund for a while, working with different companies to help on the angel round or seed stage round. I don't really want to do anything past that, just because it takes the complexity when you're leading, like, an A or B, and a time suck.
And then you got to scale and have other people.
But I'm genuinely interested in getting connected and communicating and helping people solve problems. And so I don't think, like, I'll ever not have a career or a lifestyle, that does that, because you lose some of that ability when you get to become a large company. I mean, right?
Yeah.
I come from Morgan Stanley, and you come from the finance world too. So, like, removing that red tape, having the flexibility is, like, what I achieve and what I strive to do. And one of these days, I'll figure out a business that I think is interesting to me, and probably go down that route and be asking you guys these same questions. So
Awesome.
yeah.
I love it. So, Linda, I have a request. On each side, the mics are here, but they're actually positioned right under the lights, and it's impossible to see.
I didn't even know they were there.
I couldn't see them. I kept looking, and I'm like, where are they? Can we pop them back? Perfect. And put them back more closer to the flowers, like literally. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Can you see these two people now?
Yeah, can.
Okay, fantastic.
Great.
So you guys want to ask some questions? All right, so here's how it works. Sherry, grab the mic. You got to get up. You don't need a permission slip. You rise, don't run, and you get in line at the mic, and here's how the questions go. Get very clear on the question. I know a lot of you want to tell your story, kind of where you're at perhaps in your business, and then ask the question. And honestly, we simply wouldn't have time. So everyone has an epic business, or you wouldn't be in the room. So I'm going to ask you to get to the bottom line and ask the question. Is that okay with you guys? in the most loving way I can possibly say that.
Joy is, number one, values have to be stated. If they're not clear, and if you can't say the values the same way you do, well, there's no value set, right? And this was something that John and Logan, when they started the company, had very well in mind, is that every decision we make is for the driver first. And so if you're making a decision in the business, we're making it for the driver. So you have a guiding post already, right? So if I'm doing something that doesn't seem like it's good for the driver, we're not going to do that. And everybody can relate to some form of that in their own business today. And so when I think second to that, I actually just finished a book for the third time. It's basically called The Score Will Take Care of Itself by Bill Walsh, and one of the greatest football coaches of all time. But what this book does, it's like a manuscript for setting a standard of performance, for laying out the values to communicate to your business. And it's a wonderful story. It's actually have it in my bag here because I always take snippets when I'm traveling with it because it inspires me.
Yeah.
But it's that same concept: is you have to be very clear, and you have to be flexible but persistent to your mission and your goal, because things are going to come. You're going to have to go left or right. It's no doubt.
Proceed or pivot. That's what I tell them.
Proceed or, same type of thing. And Reid Hoffman's famous for that. He founded LinkedIn, and it's flexible persistence are the people who actually achieve their mission or their goal. And it's the same thing in I say from the outside, it might look shiny and fancy or some type of algorithm to get us our mission. No, it's what's the best for the driver, right? HubSpot's use good judgment. And so when you make a decision, is this a good judgment or not, right? And that's very simple to communicate, and it resonates on so many levels. And so for in practice for you is, how do I go back, define that with the people I have, and make that your North Star, and live by it? Have a standard of excellence that people live by, or they go. That's how I make my decisions. And sometimes you have to let people go. It's because they're not at the standard of excellence that's good for everybody else. That's just the reality. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
So it's actually a combination of two things, right? You have to be set up to do this.
Yeah.
And it has to be part of your actual day-to-day activity, right? So if you let it slip, or if you let one of your employees slip on it, well, it won't stick. And this is this whole habit-forming type of thing, right? Where for you, if you're leading by example, saying, hey, we just had this call, this meeting, let's go by, review it. And so there's a few things. One, peer review, right? I do that. So basically, everybody on our floor is responsible for one peer review and a self-review every week. And then we do management reviews, when the time can come into play. And we do that by listening to calls or going through, we have screen share type of stuff where we actually have videos type of stuff. So there's a lot of different reasons, the technical stuff. But it's actually very simple. Understand what you want to measure. Mm-hmm. Write the script out for them the first time. Because if you don't give them the script, they're going to bring something back you think is ridiculous. And they won't stay. And they'll be oh, I thought I did good. Well, no, what did you do bad? Tell me. And then help them discover. And what I mean by that is that, okay, well, tell me why. I use the 5 whys. Very important here. Okay, well, why did you say that? Well, I thought this was interesting. Okay, well, why did you think that? And all I say is why 5 times, and they tell me a whole story, right? And oh, you're great. I'm no, I just said 5 whys, right? And so that's actually a tactical thing you can take back, is by asking those questions, they actually have to be self-aware in the process. They have to understand, well, why did I do the thing that I actually did, right? And the what is you giving them the template, the script, keeping a cadence, whether it's on the calendar, and also making sure that they record it a certain way so the whatever comes out, right? So without knowing more about how you're doing or what you're doing, those are very real things that you could take back tomorrow and have a huge impact right away, because now you have 4 people, 3 people, or 5 people now with you guys that are all being cautious of each other and listening to why they're saying the things that they're saying, right? And so that's just a direct example of the recording part. So we can talk more offline, but
yeah, I mean he's growing, and he's got scale, and he's got employees, and he's got culture, and he's got strategic alliances, and it was boom, 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 and then it's going to go and then
so,
the roller coaster.
So the most important thing about that comment though is that if you build that habit, the scale becomes very easy because you actually maximize your ability to tell that story and actually have a better foundation for your rep quality or for your sales quality. And if you let them just be in their own nook or cranny when they're doing these type of things where nobody can listen to them, well, they're never going to get better. Like everything that we do is open sales floor. Everybody is like always in one area where we're having conversations. We're listening to the people next to us because I'm going to pick something up from them. I'm going to use that next time. That sounded great. I'm going to use that, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same type of concept. Let people hear you. Be loud. Like understand that you're going to make mistakes, but record it, listen to it, and laugh at yourself because at the end of the day, it's going to probably sound bad most of the time.
Yeah, and that's the worst it's ever going to get because you're always going to get better.
Yeah, it's true.
So.
So the morning time is my time. If I don't get that, I'm not a happy camper. Let me tell you that. And they all know it. So like, I'll just kind of give you a rundown. Like every morning, 5:04, alarm goes off. And the first thing I do is I pull up my phone. I have 4 inboxes that I read down and make sure I get rid of the quick ones that I can get out of the way. I star the important messages that will take more than a few seconds to respond to. And then I usually will read like some macro aggregators of news. So for example, like there's tons of them out there, right? Like I use them on things like Feedly and stuff like that, where I get like, I want to learn about, let's just talk about like the Wells Fargo thing, right? It just happened, right?
Right.
I want to hear every article on Wells Fargo, and so like those will all be pumped in my inbox, and I can be like, okay, these things are interesting, now I'm done. So I lay in bed for like 20 minutes as I'm reading through those on my phone. This time, usually the girlfriend like hits me, and she's like, get out, because I'm just making too much noise. And so I get up, I go, we don't have a dishwasher, so I'm in San Francisco for you. So I go and I put the dishes away because it's like that calming doing things with your hands in the morning. And then I get on, like I have a stationary bike and I turn on the news. And by this time it's like, 5:30. And I get all the macro market news that I can for 30 minutes while I'm trying to get a sweat in and I'm breathing heavily. Funny story, actually, we got this new exercise bike and my girlfriend's like extremely great with like building things. And she forgot to tighten the seat all the way. So I'm getting on there, and
no.
I have an iPad here, and I'm like pedaling, and the seat falls off the back, and I crashed on a stationary bike. She runs out of the room. What happened? I'm like, nothing, and she's just like laughing her ass off. So that happened like last Tuesday. Yeah.
I'm glad you're okay.
Yeah, it was funny. I thought I was gonna break a mirror. There's a mirror behind us, and I hit the mirror and like slid down. I just sat there. I was like, oh my god. So
Let us all laugh at you for a minute.
Usually that happens, and it's, about that time it's about 6 o'clock, and I usually get a call from my sister who's in New York, and she's usually on her way to she works for Oprah.
Oh, right on.
So she's usually on her way into the office. They start a little later over there, apparently.
Yeah.
And usually get 10, 15 minutes with her, and then at that time, we usually actually make a smoothie, have some vitamins and a coffee, and I sit there and I'll turn on some music videos or I'll watch more market news, and I'll shower, I'll come back, and I usually read for about 20 or 30 minutes after that, and I'll sit on the couch and enjoy myself and make sure that I'm reading something that's interesting, that usually around leadership, usually around psychology. That way I'm thinking about those concepts, and I'm like taking a mental note of those concepts and trying to apply them to the actual technical business day. Mm-hmm. And like the more you do that, like you're building that mindset, like, oh, this little thing might make sense here. Like I've heard this before. So I do that, and then I usually jump in a Lyft about, 8 now. I used to get in the office at like 5, and I realized that just killed me. And I can't do that anymore, and so I have to get those 3-4 hours in the morning to myself to do the things that will progress my mind. If not, I'll just be drained by the time I get home. And if I take care of myself, it helps me take care of other people. Like I learned that.
Does that sound familiar?
So just one topic on that. There's this idea that I love. It's called pleasing versus service. And for a lot of my career, I was just trying to please bosses or please investors or please customers. But I realized that by doing that, I wasn't adding effing value to anybody, like at all. And I was like, okay, how do I change this? I was like, well, if I take care of myself, I'll feel better. I'll start thinking about things that are better for people, and like it goes outward. And so like I made a conscious effort to figure out things in my day that could do that. And it's made a huge impact in my life because I feel comfortable now helping or going deeper on something versus going from like one thing, where you're just trying to please all these people at one time, where it just never works out very well. Mm-hmm. So get in a Lyft, and a lot of times I do a Lyft line, so I have like 3 or 4 people in the car with me, and we're talking, and we're like, sharing ideas, and they're from all over the country or the world or different offices, and you usually meet some really great people and strike up some good conversations. Then I get to the office about like 8:45, 9, and all hell breaks loose. So
Yeah.
that's my day, yeah. Our competitor, Slytherin, wanted to grow at all costs. This is very important, right? We think of them as a logistics company. They do Uber Eats, they do all these type of things, right? And their business decisions are made around logistics, legitimately, right? Like Amazon, like getting things from A to B. And that comes off in their product, right? And their marketing and their experience. If you look at all their marketing outward, it's very dark. It's very business focused. It's like, I'm intense, I'm gonna do this, right? And then like you feel that same experience when you get into the car because they think like, oh, the chauffeured experience. Well, in actuality, like most of the time it's really weird to sit in the back of a car without talking to somebody. That norm is changing. And so like, that was their approach, and like we are just much different. Like we were very, I'll come back to like where our guiding post is a driver. So we understood that the experience had to go through the driver first. And it wasn't till this year we launched our first ever, TV marketing campaign. We hadn't done anything. And the reason is that our value was about growing through our influencers and market up approach. Because we go into every market, we establish a set of influencers, help communicate that experience that we talked about, and all of a sudden you have economies at scale. And at that point, we made a conscious decision with that funding that we talked about earlier to actually have a nationwide presence where people in Georgia, people in New York, people in San Diego felt the same way they did as like the people in San Francisco when it started out. And so it was actually done with we had to go very slow on purpose, because if we overextended our reach, we might lose that core concept or that core value that we were actually trying to accomplish. And I mean, without getting technical or like reviewing too much, is that the reason we did that is because we wanted to incite interest. If you've ever seen our campaign, it's like very, like, well, what's going on here, right? Mm-hmm. And like you see like this incredibly happy person leave at the end of it. And we didn't want to have a feeling with like the darkness or having a staunchy type of feeling. And we had to let them play out their course a little bit before we did, so we could counter kind of what they were doing. So that was the reasoning without getting like, it's a long conversation, trust me. There's a lot more to it, but at a very high level, like that was some of our decision making in that process.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Usually whenever I start a team or I invite somebody to actually start a sales team, I always have them bring two people on at the same time. Because they can't be siloed and they have to compete and they have to learn from each other, and usually you can progress growth much faster that way. And one skill set might lead better to this and that, and you'll find out really quick. But if you have one person, especially in the beginning, well, you just don't know if they're good or not because they're not competing, they're not doing anything like that. But the biggest mistake that I've always seen, especially in small companies, is that you expect that salesperson to be the salesperson without a lot of guidance and onboarding and actual, like you haven't scripted out their day, you haven't scripted out their first 30 days, you haven't scripted out their first 60 days, you haven't laid out a goal in front of them. And if you haven't done that, well, obviously they're going to fail. Because they don't know where they're going, right? And I remember the first time I ever went through that process, like, yeah, it's sales, like you just do it, right? That's not the reality. We talked about process all day long. Mm-hmm. And people are motivated. I have this theory called the Lego theory, like little chunks at a time motivates big results, right? And like IBM was incredibly good at this way back in the beginning because they made quotas so low, everybody made a shit ton of money and just like accelerated, their selling, and that was like a revolutionary technique back in the day. But when you have a small business, like it has to be so directive. It's like call client 1, 2, and 3 to do X, Y, Z, and don't stop until you get it, and then let them figure out how to do it, right? We tell them like what to do, and they'll figure out how to do it, right? Especially in those early stages, like you want that type of pioneer on your team that will go into a new area and go into a new consumer, ask hard questions, and develop that town that you're trying to build, which is your sales muscle in an organization. Mm-hmm. And if you're not structured with very clear specifics, they will fail, unless you have someone that's done it 4 or 5 times. And I don't know enough yet, but it sounds kind of like they petered out, and like maybe wasn't enough direction, maybe the money wasn't good enough, but I think the money will always come if people are motivated by the right reasons. And usually people want direction and clarity. And so if you give that to them, they usually have a route they can follow. Like they'll follow that road. But if you just go, hey, go back into the desert and find your way home, they're going to get tired and lost real quick.
And salespeople are not always motivated by money.
No.
I mean, a lot of people assume that if you dangle the dollar carrot out there, that's what's going to motivate them. And oftentimes it's like not even the case. Some is recognition, some is impact, some is contribution, some is, people, their language is of service.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you have to find out, what motivates them. Salespeople especially, can certainly love money
Yeah.
because of what it will allow them to do, but it's not their core driver. So,
I'm actually not motivated by money, to be honest. Like, that's the result of doing the right thing.
that's the same with me.
Right.
But maybe that's why we love sales so
It could
much,
be.
because,
There's no highs and lows for me,
right,
right? It's just like it's like a process that keeps going forward, step by step.
yeah.
Because like I'm not gonna get tired. Like I'll get there someday, but you don't
You
don't
don't-
worry about that quick jump right away.
Exactly.
Right?
Fractional time for
Fraction,
private.
yeah. So
fine.
in that concept, no, right? Like that is logistical-based reasoning for doing business, and like that's not part of our core value. What we are going to is autonomous vehicles, and like we're going to be doubling down and shifting our focus to doing that. I mean, it is the future. Smart cities are happening, right? And so when we think about transportation, we think about a holistic view of how people interact with their environments and how they engage with the products they need to do that. And so what I think becomes very interesting is not, these are, I would call those more gimmicky businesses, right? And gimmicky is probably the wrong word, but like they're doing fractional sharing, like the sharing economy, the gig economy, right? It's so relevant now, and it's going to continue to keep going forward because we can share with ease, and we have access and availability to so many more things now. But like that core message for us actually never changes. Like the double down that we are making is in autonomous vehicles, because that's what's happening, whether we like it or not. And we want to be a leader in that because we can still create a people experience in an autonomous vehicle. And at the end of the day, like if I were to show you models of how we grow, we actually don't lose our driver base. Like we're going to do this with this technology, but still have that core fundamental thing that grew us to where we are, which was the driver. And so when I think about like fractional jet, like, I mean, like there's so many like Jet Smarter, ExoJet, all these type of like fractional ownership types of things.
Yeah, flying private's awesome.
It's
And
great.
it's affordable.
Almost.
It used to be like, what was it? Fly the front of the plane and the back
Yeah.
of the car.
Oh,
And
yeah,
now
the
it's
jump
like
seats, yeah, yeah.
fly,
Yeah.
fly with no seat numbers
Yeah.
and all these cliches.
Yeah, I mean, like you talk about like Jet Smarter, like you pay, $14,000 a year for a membership, and you get fractional jet usage time, and most of the time you get free flights all over the country or the world, wherever you want to go.
It's
Like,
less than
that's-
first class, too.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's great. But like, what does that solve? Like, that's like that doesn't have like an outward message. And so like my point is that like, yeah, that stuff is great for some people, but we're looking much larger than that for our business because we want to affect the way cities evolve. We want to affect the way people interact with their environments, and that has some really material impact, and it's sustainable. I mean, Logan, our CEO and our founder, he wants to be the first $1 trillion company. Like that's his goal, and he's said it outwardly. Like that's insane.
It's so awesome.
Like, and so like, how do we do that? Well, we have to have these things that shape environments where everybody is, not just like small fractional pockets, which is your future benefit play. Back to that, right? Like that's exciting until the next one's exciting. But if people have this platform or that everything comes to, like that's world changing. And so like that's how we think about the business today. So the one thing that's interesting, so we started at the same time. Uber caught on much faster. What people actually don't realize is that the majority of things that Uber has actually done, they just steal from us. That's kind of smart. Like they take good products and they have like 10,000 plus employees, and we have like 1,600 now or something, like 1,800, and they just have so much more capital, right? And so we're very thoughtful in our approach, and they just throw people on something and they steal it and they go and they do that. And if you've ever ridden, you've experienced some of the things that happens there. It's very like here, and no consistency in the experience, right? So I've met Travis before. He's an interesting guy. He can't win sometimes, but he's a very sharp guy. And what they're doing is obviously changing the way people think about getting from A to B. So like, I can't fault them on that. It's just our approach is so much different, and we're much more, I think, thoughtful in the techniques that we try to use. And like, we don't care as much about Uber Eats, where like you're getting your food delivered, right? And so our decisions don't fall around that. So from a competitive standpoint, the one thing I think is interesting, and you guys might have this in your own lives, is that I have never been a part of something that is so fierce, like in a competitive nature. It is like a level of hatred between the two organizations, and it's visible, and it's also vocal. And so it's like your biggest rivals that, like, no, this is ours. Like, we're going to do everything we can to overcome these challenges together. And like,
Feels like the banking industry.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's yeah, without going into some stories that are probably inappropriate for here, but
On both of us.
yeah. So it's a little contrarian to belief is that you shouldn't be worrying about your competition. And some people might be going like, oh, but like they're visible. Take care of what you have to do in your business, right? If you're doing things the right way, you should overcome those type of things, and people are going to migrate their usage or their behavior to what you're doing. And a lot of people, like you'll see like the SWOT analysis of like my competitors, and like here's all these things that are doing that. We'll learn from that, but put your head down and go past it. And especially when you're early on and like, a budding entrepreneur that like wants to like, take a step and a step and a step. If you're spending 20% of your mental power on the competition, well, like that opportunity cost for your business is now gone,
Yeah.
right? So I think that's how I feel. Now, when you look at like the Nikes and the Adidas, when they get to that stage, it becomes a little different. Like the positioning becomes different. But if
Right
you're
now, just keep your head down.
yeah, keep your head down and like take that one step and then take the next step. And when you fall down, well, take that next step. Because I guarantee your competitor's not thinking that way. And that's why a lot of small businesses do fail, but some really great ones do succeed through this huge competitive landscape. It's because they were so focused that they believed in the things that they were trying to accomplish, they just did it anyways. And one day someone was like, yeah, I like that. So that's my belief on that. So I'll give you a couple things. When I started, like I didn't, like a friend told me I should try sales. I didn't know I came from finance, right? And I was like, okay, whatever, dude. And when I moved to San Francisco, I slept on a couch 6 months, and I just started doing sales, and I just kind of figured it out. And what happened was I realized I didn't know anything, and I was okay with that. And I just started reading everything I possibly could. And in the last 4 years, I've probably read close to 200 books on sales management and philosophy and business startups, whatever it is, right? I have a laundry list on a Google Doc. I can just give it to you.
Yeah, I have a page set up
Yeah.
for things like this that come up. I call it, when we have audibles, it's noglassceiling.com/dealmaker.
Yeah.
So if you send me the list,
Yeah.
I'll pop the list on the deal maker page,
Yeah.
and that way they can all see the books.
Yeah, so a few things I'm reading right now that I think are really good. Like I just said, I reread The Score Will Take Care of Itself with Bill Walsh. Everybody should read that book. It has so many tactical things in that book that you'll just be like, yeah, I'm going to do that. Like, this sounds amazing. I'm going to do that. And everything you're thinking in your mind, like, that's so relatable. And, like, those are the things, especially at the stage, like, are important. The other one is Turn This Ship Around, I believe it's called. And one of the biggest things I see, especially in companies, is management structure pushing things downwards versus growing people upwards. And so it's about a submarine that has this contrarian belief to management of empowering the employees to run the ship, and they become the best ship in the Navy for, like, ever. It's very short. It's got like tidbits everywhere, and it's fantastic. Ego is the Enemy, one I just, by Ryan Holiday. I just read that one. I truly believe in that, and I'll tell you a story on why, is as soon as you have an ego about something, you can't learn about it. You remove yourself from the willingness to learn, and that can really hurt you. And so I know we're running out of time here, but what I did the reason how I started learning about all this type of stuff is every day, and I did this for like the first year I lived in San Francisco, every day I reached out to somebody on LinkedIn and I said, I have a problem, I'm not sure how to solve it. I'm sure you've seen this. Do you know anybody? And I would just pick like VPs of sales or founders or CEOs or directors. And because I'd get there, like I said, I took the 509 bus. I get there in the morning. I take East Coast calls. Before anybody got to the office, I already had enough sales done. I didn't have to worry about the rest of the day. So I'd spend the next hour or so like trying to connect with people and understand like the problems they were trying to solve. And that one person led to 3, and that 3 led to 15. And all of a sudden, like, everybody, and if you got a problem, and you just ask them.
Right.
But the key component of that is I never asked for anything. I never pitched anything. I was just curious. And I would say, like, the number one thing that propelled me, in the last 4 years from basically not knowing anything to now have generated over $100 million in business is that I was willing to ask and okay being afraid, knowing that I didn't know the answer. And that helped me compound that quick growth period. So, I think that's something I want to leave with everybody, and also pay it forward. Like, help people out. It makes you better at what you do. It makes you better at your communication. Helps you understand the real problems that you have. And it doesn't take a lot of time, right? And a lot of times you learn something from that person because you haven't thought of it that way. And those are really those key components where you see successful people rise or successful companies rise. I truly believe those are the components that manifest in those cultures. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
pretty incredible. Give Dallas a hand.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
No, don't get up.
Thank you.
Don't get up there. Just hang out.
All
Just
right.
look. We're not leaving yet. I just said give him a hand. Look, they're playing the music. It's like at the Grammys. It's like we've talked enough. You gotta go.
You've heard enough of me.
Yeah. But I just want to take an extra 15
Yeah.
seconds.
Cool.
And on a serious note,
Yeah.
because we do joke around a lot, I want to say thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Heartfelt, seriously, thank you. Thank you for busting it to get down here last night. You and I are probably the only ones that know what it really took to get the schedules and do.
Yep.
And you did it. You said, I'll be there. We got to just figure it out. And I just want you to know I am super, super grateful. You came in late last night. I know you're splitting right now. You can't even eat. If the team can get you a doggy bag to go or something, like, please just let them know. But seriously, the value and the awesomeness, and it was obviously great to see you, and we'll connect again soon and all that good stuff. But I just want to say thank you for
Yeah.
being here.
Thank-
I
thank-
so appreciate
Thank you, and thank you to everyone. Like, this is I appreciate
Dallas
it. Yeah.
Hogensen, everything. Hogensen.
Yeah.
Right. You're so welcome.